Hello, my name is Eric Olson, and I'll be doing the lecture series on perspective. The type of perspective I learned and want to teach and be really thorough with is based on some simple principles. Here in this diagram is some of them. These are our ideas that are from our vision, looking out into the world, and we'll talk a lot about that later, but they're very important. So I want to constantly refer to them and have them in the background, try to burn them into your heads, because this is really, really important. Not all of this is going to be really technical. This is about drawing. So this is perspective for artists and for drawers. The idea is keeping the art of drawing alive, and perspective, of course, is a big part of that. But I want to make it clear from the very beginning, we're trying to subordinate the perspective with our artistic desires and compositional wishes as artists. So we're going to always work backwards from a narrative sketch or something that already declares what we want to do with the picture or with the objects or with the composition, and then work backwards to the formal so it can help us do that. That's really, really important. Otherwise, you feel like you're limited and you have to follow this kind of mechanical system. We're not doing that. We're going to learn a lot of mechanics, don't worry about that, and measuring and all, the whole 9 yards. But the idea is it's going to be driven by compositional desires and an artistic vision, meaning I'm going to learn how to do this so I can do what I want with it in my way. And that will be achieved by basically, of course, many diagrams, and I'd like you to draw with me on the diagrams in real time and keep your own notebook of diagrams, which is critical, with explanations, which I'll provide and talk about and have at the end, recap at the end of diagrams. Also, we're going to be doing some digital draw-overs and some very simple 3D movement through space to explain perspective, and look at some master paintings, of course. The main thing, though, is you keep that notebook and you're drawing with me. And you're drawing on your own, by the way, after that. You are taking these ideas further, doing little sketches, trying all these variables you can after I maybe give you the main idea. Keep inventing of why it works after you think you have it down so that you really get how to do this and memorize this stuff. It's not that hard, actually, when you realize this is actually how we see. It's just a system of geometry broken down to replicate it, but it's incredibly close to how we see, almost exactly. So it works quite well. Another thing I wanted to mention is I want you to realize that you can use this for your own style. The idea is this is not something or lecture series on, we all want you to draw this way. This is not a perspective or drawing technique. It has nothing to do with the word technique, okay? That's a poor way to put it. These are concepts that are related to how we see very clearly, and they can be taken and stylized, they can be stretched, they can be bent. You can use curvilinear perspective once you understand how to achieve these scenes. The whole point is for you to be able to take it into the direction you want to. So even if you want to be a German expressionist and only use perspective and views based on that idea, this will still be incredibly helpful because you'll understand how to do any type of view and then abstract from it because you know actually how the perspective works. That's my goal, is everybody on whatever level learns the perspective, and this is critical. I wanted to also mention observational drawing. I'll be looking at my notes occasionally here. Observational drawing is extremely important as well. Of course, that's how you express and start getting your own sense of how you want to draw. There's many ways to draw representationally and paint representationally, or even semi-representationally, hundreds really. So let's just be clear that this is information, and that's what it's meant to be. It's not about being a technician only, and it's not about saying, oh, you're supposed to be drawing correctly like this. This shows you how the world appears to us in an incredibly close way to it. So what? That's what the system is, to understand how the views are achieved by looking down, 3-point, up. Why can I look straight up in the air? What's the difference? How do I change? Where do the vanishing points go? Those are all questions you'll still have to ask as you're sketching and drawing, even in a semi-stylized way. So I just want to make that extremely clear that we're not trying to make anybody draw one way. I've taught this for a long time, and I certainly was a big fan of it when I learned it because it allowed me to do anything I wanted in any style I wanted. So that's really the point I wanted to get at. Observational drawing is very important to sketchbooks, trying to draw objects, trying to understand how to do these different variables from landscape drawings, drawing rooms, drawing people, putting them in perspective. All that you can just do in little exercises for yourself, as well as work on your line quality, how you like to draw, replicating artists you really like. You can still do all that while practicing the perspective. It doesn't have to be a separate exercise. That is an incorrect way of thinking, I think. If you want to learn perspective, you can take it and you can bring the perspective, into the realm of what you like to do and practice it and get to know the views and really get technical with it. We'll be getting quite technical on the diagrams in some cases, and other ones will be really simply, how to place figures all in a correct scale. So we'll be covering all that, and I'll be getting into that in the diagrams, and we'll be getting more into the explanation of what this is all about in the next segment. I just wanted to make some ideas clear to you at the very beginning that, this is perspective for artists again, and I want to make that super clear. Okay, drawing's a language. Let's be honest. Visual art, drawing, figure drawing, transparent drawing through objects, understanding them as transparent things first so that you understand what's on the other side. Volumetric drawing, figure drawing, landscape painting, perspective drawing. All of it's, saying the same thing essentially. You're trying to express that. Color mixing real color, actually physically seeing color, mixing, many variables on it. All these type of basics are really important. So perspective, of course, is a big part of that. So again, it's information, and what you do with it is the exciting part and the new part, frankly, because you'll be going into the future in new ways than others have. This is just classic information that is about how we see. It's very analogous to music. It's very analogous to writing. There is still sentence structure. Words are still spoken in order. There's an order to writing, and there's an art to it. There's also in music, of course, you play scales. You have to be able to read music. You have to be able to understand and play an instrument well. There's things and facts you actually have to do in order to be a professional musician and then compose new music. So we're thinking the same thing. This is just the basics of, like, an analogy would be, this is more maybe around the line of classical music as opposed to jazz, whereas jazz took classical music and all the rules and all the sophistication and pushed it in another very exciting direction. That's exactly how this information should be used. It's not about itself only. It's not an end to the mean. It is simply a way to get there. So that's an important idea. We'll be doing a lot of thumbnails and freehand sketching before we get into the diagrams to kind of feel out what we want to do or make an example, little sketch diagrams, a little bit of value here, talk about lighting later, all that kind of stuff. Then semi-formal perspective drawings are where you pretty much are doing mostly freehand with a little bit of straight edge assistance and really drawing to vanishing points. But we won't be measuring necessarily all the time. We won't be measuring depth. Then sometimes we will be. The full-on formal perspective is measuring depth, which, this apparatus has to do with, as well as very simple thumbnails. This is always present no matter when we're drawing, actually, if you didn't know it. Kind of like the constellations. They're invisible sometimes, but they're always there. So the idea, we will go all the way to formal perspective, all the way to measured 3-point in very, very fast ways. There's ways to cut down the steps and procedures to measure in 3-point where you can get it down to just a few steps. It's very simple. We're always going to be talking about the frame and the composition first, then we're going to work the perspective into it. So that's important because it's not going to become overly mechanical except for its actual execution. That part gets mechanical at first because you have to understand why things cross each other, where the vanishing points are. But technically, we're using it for a higher purpose, and that is to get the composition and views we want. That's critical. Okay? How do we see the world? We see it with binocular vision. Obviously, perspective, if I'm standing in the station point here, kind of where this is supposed to be viewed from in the size of my cone, which we'll explain just in a few minutes. The idea here is that in perspective, unlike how we see, it's from a single viewpoint. So you have to almost close an eye and imagine you're never moving and you're absolutely stationary. And that's how you see everything moving consistently. So we're not seeing binocular vision necessarily when we're drawing in perspective. We're from a single viewpoint with a single eye. But effectively, it doesn't matter. We just say it's right between the eyes, the station point, which we'll get to in a bit. So the camera's the same thing. The camera lens adds distortion. Camera work is its own thing. It's not exactly how we see either. But it's incredibly close. And of course, it's a great illusion. And so is linear perspective. It's a fantastic illusion. Both are practically the same. And for our purposes as artists, they pretty much work exactly the same. So if their nuances really don't matter. We'll be discussing lens frames, everything about how to frame out and why we can frame around the cone, all sorts of stuff having to do with composition, art, and figuring out what you want to say with the composition. So remember, it's about helping your concepts and your ideas about what you want to do. And the more freedom you have to do any view you want is the more freedom you have to come up with any concept you want, because concepts are directly related to narrative in painting and drawing much of the time, especially in semi-representational and representational art, obviously. So that makes sense. And again, I just wanted to cap off again, this is compositionally based. And what I mean is lots of variables. So we're not going to teach some formulaic way and say, oh, well, if you want to do this and you're kind of looking over here, here's a way you can do it. Here's a trick. We're not going to be using words like that, or I'm not going to be. I learned the full Monty, basically, all the way of everything you could do with perspective, basically. And there's 8 different ways you can do it. You can't remember them half the time. That's why that's why you write the notes down. The notes, the lectures, a few books you like, all that stuff is helpful to go, oh yeah, I want to kind of get this view, but I've forgotten exactly how do I approach it and what are the general outlooks of that? Oh yeah, I forgot. So you just, you refer to your notes. But compositionally, how do I get, 5, 6, 10 variables on a kind of a scene I want as I'm compositionally sketching, just as an artist in a sketchbook, but with the rules here in mind, kind of invisible cobweb thin ideas. You can do a lot to go toward just mapping out a real view, and then you can start stylizing it immediately, and you can transfer that into a huge canvas or a mural, and you're off to the races. It's like instant. It's not like you have to, go through a lot of transitions here. If you can do a really nailed composition in a sketch, you can enlarge that sketch either by simple gridding, however you wish, and then you can get right on it because the view is solid because perspective. And that's what we're really going to, that's the goal of the lectures, is to really get you feeling in 1, 2, and 3 point and all the different factors and variables that I could have thrown at me. I can create an infinite amount of views is the important thing. And I really want to stress that. And again, this helps us do it. These are the 4 items that are ours when we look into the world. I'll just name them. The eye level you're familiar with, which can be the horizon line where the ground and the sky meet forever if we're in traditional 1 and 2 point. But we can also be looking down in 1 and 2 point and straight up in 1 and 2 point, as well as all around a sphere. The idea of the center of vision is always the plane at which we're standing straight in front of vertically. And of course, the station point is the point between our eyes in the position we are actually looking from with our eyeballs, always. And the cone of vision is a projection that is always present because it's our view of basic distortion here. And the reason we distort is because we are making a 2-dimensional statement from a 3-dimensional idea. So in our own view, we can never divorce ourselves from our own cone. It's always with us along with the rest of this setup. In paper, you can look at a distorted area that is outside the cone where perspective gets real funny. You can't do that with your own eyes because by the time you switch over to a new view, you already changed all that information over here, and then you're looking at a non-distorted view again. So you can never escape your own cone of vision. You can't really see the distortion in your own view, which I guess philosophically is kind of tragic, but you can't. So we can, though, on paper and in 2-dimensional translations, okay? So that's about it. I wanted to just make it clear again that I'm really happy about doing this, and I want to give you everything I know, just not parts and like a bridge. I don't want to make it the abridged version. I want it to, really give you more than I've ever done, even in my own notebook or anything, and really put it together carefully because I'm excited about the fact that more than ever these days, we want to convey that drawing is its own art form, and perspective, linear perspective in drawing form is really important. And I wanted to stress also that, of course, digitally, people are drawing all the time in 2-dimensional digital programs. So the computer screen, this wall, a piece of paper, it's all about the picture plane, which is the flat wall here. We're looking at an actual wall with a diagram, but that, again, could be a wall, it could be a piece of paper, a computer screen, it can be anything that you want to do a drawing on and give the illusion of form on in 3-dimensional ideas. So again, it's open to anybody, no matter how digital you are. It's not technically a 3D program, it's the original 3D program, of course, from 500 years ago and more. But the idea is, if you are a big drawer and painter digitally, these ideas can be, drawn up and made 200 DPI layer digitally and simply drawn out to everything you need as information. Then you can crop in on the frame, you can blow it way up in size and start painting. There's nothing you can't do with this stuff digitally that you can't, you can do traditionally. It's all the same, okay? So with that, we'll continue on and actually explaining this stuff and getting started on the definitions in that part, all right? So we'll see you in a bit, okay?